Good afternoon. Welcome to the AmeriCorps General Information Webinar. We're so excited that you're joining us today. My name is Kat Keene. I serve as the National Service Programs Director at Volunteer Florida. Also joining me is Anitra Thomas, our Training and Grants Coordinator. Today, this webinar will be recorded and will be posted in the available grants section of our website for future use. Everyone is muted on the call today. We will stop at various points throughout the webinar to check in and answer your questions. We won't be engaging the chat too much today due to the content and the time. So if you do have questions that you aren't able to get an answer to in this webinar, my contact information is at the end, and I am available to you as well as our Volunteer Florida team to answer your questions. We assume that you want to get more people power and more funding to move the needle on things that matter to you most in your community. And our goal today is to share with you one way to do that, AmeriCorps state funding. So as we move through the presentation together, I want to ask you to do two things. First, be curious. Think about how you, in your role, in your community, right now, can make use of this opportunity. And then the second thing is think big. Consider partnerships, coalitions, groups of individuals that could support this program, and think transformational change. So let's get started. Today we're going to cover the big picture of national service. We're going to talk about AmeriCorps specifics like our grant guidelines, members, activities, and budgets. And then we're going to talk about next steps. Volunteer Florida, our organization, was established in 1994, and we're the lead agency for volunteerism and national service in Florida. We're governed by a board of commissioners appointed by the governor and also approved by the Florida Senate. And we do four main things at Volunteer Florida: administer AmeriCorps programs, coordinate volunteers and donations before, during, and after disaster, increase volunteerism, grants, trainings, and recognition, and manage the Volunteer Florida Foundation. If you have needs in your organization that you think are not a match for AmeriCorps state funding, please continue to sign up for our communications and connect with our staff. We do have other funding opportunities available. Today, we are going to talk about this one, AmeriCorps. Anybody on the call from Orlando? This is the City Beautiful. This is what national service looks like in our state. Over 2,000 service locations, over 12,000 AmeriCorps and Senior Corps members serving. And this statistic, I love that there's been over $98 million in scholarships earned since 1994. I want to give you a picture of the big picture of national service. You've probably heard of various AmeriCorps type programs previously. So picture the star and the individual at the top. That is an AmeriCorps member. And moving down the image, a site, maybe like a school or a community-based organization. And then organization, that could be a foundation, a nonprofit, a school district, a college, a university, municipality. And then those boxes underneath with those various programs, those are all of the types of national service programs that are available to you. We won't be talking about all of them today, but I do want to share with you that there are many national resources available to you. Another quick graphic, AmeriCorps, you can see the suite of AmeriCorps programs, state and national, VISTA, NCCC, the three types of Senior Corps program, and the Volunteer Generation Fund. Volunteer Florida supports those programs you see in red. Those are things to follow up with us on. The Senior Corps and other programs are supported by the CNCS State Office, and we can connect you to their amazing staff team as well and get you started there. I love this graphic, 8 reasons to love AmeriCorps. One of the things I'll point to is the leverage, the billion leverage. You know, there is a significant return on investment for national service programs, according to a report by economists at Columbia University, that every dollar invested generates almost 4 in return to society related to higher earnings, increased output, lower spending on government programs, and community-wide benefits. It's a public-private partnership. That's where the match comes in. But there's a tremendous amount of people and organizations leveraging this around our country. You'll also see just those large numbers of service locations, over 21,000, tackling problems with local solutions in our country. And you'll see the information on disaster response and veterans served. There's a lot of good work happening with AmeriCorps service. Here's a picture kind of, again, nationally, it's a solution. Service is a solution. Millions of individuals can be supported by measurable and proven impacts each year. AmeriCorps members are over 80,000 strong in our nation, and more than 1 million members have contributed more than 1.4 billion hours across America while tackling pressing community problems. This is what our portfolio looks like. 35 AmeriCorps programs that we support. We'd like you to be 36, 37, 38 next year. Over 1,300 AmeriCorps members are serving with Volunteer Florida's AmeriCorps state programs in 31 counties. There are some areas of the state that this resource is not being utilized, and we want to change that by supporting your strong applications this year. About 80% of our funding currently supports education in Florida, and that is primarily because that is the area that we receive strong applications in, tutoring and mentoring programs. However, as you'll see momentarily, AmeriCorps can provide all kinds of community solutions. We're proud of this statistic. Our AmeriCorps members last year served over 54,000 students in 358 schools. 69% of our students that were tested and tutored demonstrated significant improvement, academic improvement. And we're really proud of the $38 million value of that service and the schools and communities that had those incredible tutors and mentors supporting them. We'd like you to be part of this story next year. So this is the question I ask people when we talk about AmeriCorps. I ask them, how can the people power of AmeriCorps move the needle on critical issues in your community? What is it that you want to move the needle on? And that is where to start. So is your challenges in your community related to academic gain of students? Is it people experiencing homelessness? Is it that is it the veterans in your community need access to college and employment opportunities? AmeriCorps can help. Think about what gap exists between your current funding and your organization's strategic plans and your big picture goals. AmeriCorps is the people power to connect those gaps, to fill in those gaps for your communities. I'm going to pause here before we jump into what we call performance measures and just see if there are any of you all that have any questions on the line.
Presentation mode is now disabled.
Are there any questions that I can answer for you up to this point?
Yes, I have a question.
Sure, go ahead.
Okay, this is Doreen Cicero. I'm with Reserve, and I'm here with Ascension. She is one of our reservists, and we have used AmeriCorps funding, and we're taking part in this to consider it again. But you mentioned the funding gap, and for us, finding the matching funds for the AmeriCorps funds is a challenge.
Sure. Okay, so if your question is related to match and how to secure match, we do have some information coming up on that. And so there's a 24% match in cash or in kind that is required as part of the grant in year 1 through 3. And there's various strategies on how to secure that match. So we will get to that momentarily.
Okay, thank you.
Is there another question we can answer?
Hello.
Sure, go ahead.
Hi, how are you? This is Luisana from Assistance to the Elderly. I'm just curious that I see that you have 4 typical, focus areas. And of course, we wouldn't fit into any of these. We work with the older and disabled community in Miami-Dade. So I'm wondering if it's even out of these 4 areas, if you guys will consider it, considering that if there is a problem in our community that we need to address.
Great question. Thank you so much for asking. We will jump into this now. There are more than 4, just 4 on this slide, but there's a second slide. So we'll get to your answer in just a moment. There are really 7 areas of CNCF focus as far as moving the needle in certain areas of performance. And now with this the Notice of Funding Opportunity, we also see that applicants can adopt their own applicant-determined performance measures. So there's a lot of options. Great question. I'm going to
Thank you.
Sure. So we'll take a few more questions in just a moment.
Presentation mode is now enabled.
So perfect question for our next area. CNCS, the Corporation for National Community Service, considers these the focus areas for national service. On this screen, you see education. We've talked about mentoring and tutoring, environmental stewardship, trail maintenance, energy efficiency, weatherization, disaster services, responding to disaster, and also working in mitigation efforts, veterans and military families, supporting our veterans and military families. We also have the areas of economic opportunity. AmeriCorps members provide job training and placement, tax prep services, and others. Capacity building refers to the volunteer generation measure for AmeriCorps, in that AmeriCorps members are also engaging additional volunteers that serve alongside them. And Healthy Futures, I think that's the one our participant just mentioned. This is a category that really targets things like health inequities, nutrition education, food insecurity, independent living and social support for persons with disabilities and those that are elderly, and also health access. This is where we see performance measures on accessing preventative care and other benefits programs. And we don't have a lot of programs that are engaged in this in Florida, but we could certainly have more. And with these performance measures, what you would do in your budget is this is the area that you're going to make an impact. And you're going to share what your output is and your outcome. And output is vulnerable populations served. So students that got services, elders that received services, or in the case of environmental stewardship, it may be miles that have been maintained or acres in a watershed that have been improved. And then there's the outcome. And an outcome is a change of knowledge, skills, behavior, or condition as a result of AmeriCorps service. So you're going to share that your AmeriCorps members are going to serve X number of people, for example, and as a result, what is going to happen? What is the transformational change? And how are you going to measure it? Oftentimes, we see organizations that are engaging AmeriCorps members in building out solutions that are already working in their community, or they are engaging in new and innovative solutions. So both of those are applicable here. What you see here is really a recruitment flyer. When we're talking about what is AmeriCorps for an individual, for a member, why would an individual serve in AmeriCorps? Well, here's why. It's an opportunity to make our world better, to help children learn, to bring needed services. It's changing the world and making it a better place. And AmeriCorps is an experience. Members gain leadership and responsibility and job skills. They themselves receive mentoring, and oftentimes they're hired by the organizations where they're serving. The tangible benefits that come with AmeriCorps service is, first, AmeriCorps members are receiving a stipend, a living allowance. It's not a lot of money. We'll get to that momentarily, but they are compensated in terms of a living allowance. They also receive student loan deferment and health insurance for full-time members. Another really amazing actual benefit is that AmeriCorps members with children that are full-time members receive a child care benefit, which means there's a direct national provider that pays directly to the child care facility, and AmeriCorps members can then get great child care for their children while they're serving. And from what I hear from my programs, these are often, the better or best child care organizations in the community. Members pick where they want their children to be cared for. And finally, the AmeriCorps member will receive a Siegel Education Award at the completion of their term of service. And it equals the Pell Grant each year. It's about $6,000. So that's a huge incentive for that AmeriCorps member's future education expense. It can also be used to repay federally qualified student loans, and if that AmeriCorps member is 55 or older, that education award can be passed down to their children and grandchildren. So what we see is that who is the AmeriCorps member? That person is in your community right now. Your AmeriCorps members are your neighbors, they're retired teachers, they're college students, they're people in the communities that you serve. They are all around you. So that AmeriCorps member is somebody that you would recruit and retain in your program. They are your community. AmeriCorps members can also be recruited from AmeriCorps.gov, which is a national website. And any individual could go on that website and say, I want to serve in AmeriCorps. What are opportunities in Florida? And they would see your opportunity. So sometimes people do come from other parts of the country, but mostly those AmeriCorps members are your neighbors in your community. We mentioned the college scholarship. This is just a quick graphic about that. AmeriCorps members have earned over $2.7 billion in the Siegel AmeriCorps Education Award. It's pretty exciting because what we also see is those AmeriCorps members earning that college scholarship in their community are using that college scholarship to attend their community colleges and their state colleges. So those funds, those experiences, and thus those members are often staying in the communities, learning about the communities, and getting an education to better serve in those communities. A couple examples that I wanted to share besides the tutoring and mentoring, here's what AmeriCorps members could do. Just a few ideas. Assist veterans with connecting to college and job skill training. They could remove invasive exotics from public parks, restore habitat. They could engage in community safety programs with neighborhood association and the sheriff and police departments. AmeriCorps members could support home repair and housing units made available to disadvantaged individuals. They could work on public structures and weatherization or retrofitting to increase energy efficiency. AmeriCorps members could support financial literacy or health access services. And we've also talked about the disaster preparedness and mitigation. And then finally, something that is another area is AmeriCorps members could connect uninsured or medically underserved individuals in any area, including rural areas, so that they can access preventative and primary care services and programs. So I share these examples. These are just some to share with you kind of the breadth of service of how AmeriCorps members could support and strengthen your communities. Okay, so we're going to talk a little here, and then we're going to answer some more questions. At a high level, things to know are that AmeriCorps programs are funded through federal funds. So those of you that are managing existing federal funds and grants, you're familiar with the level of detail, the paperwork, the application. These are federal funds, and that accountability is high. Organizations apply to Volunteer Florida through a competitive process. And if awarded, you would receive a grant to support your AmeriCorps program. The host or lead agency fully manages the program at the local level. And note that AmeriCorps members are not staff. They cannot be placed in administrative functions. So AmeriCorps members are not capacity builders. They're not answering phones. They're not proctoring tests. They're not filing, filing charts. They are providing direct services in your community. AmeriCorps members have that stipend amount that's part of the grant. So organizations are responsible for collecting timesheets, for managing the AmeriCorps members, making sure that their service activities engaged in are appropriate, and provide supervision. You can think about it as far as what it would be like to bring on 10 or 20 new people to your organization. It is the time that you put in on the front end to truly manage your AmeriCorps members and provide them a great experience will help you tenfold. In the beginning, when you're starting up your grant year, Volunteer Florida provides a tremendous amount of support because we want you to be successful. So I'm going to pause here and see what other questions we can answer.
Presentation mode is now disabled.
Does anyone have a question?
I do.
Go ahead.
Yeah, my name is Yvonne Petrozidis, and we are a continuum of care lead agency, and we're considering an opportunity to pursue this because we have what's called coordinated entry here, and coordinated entry is mainly done by phones because we don't perform direct services other than referral services. And what we wanted to do was increase our hours of operation and phone lines so we could take more calls. And what we do is we do an assessment with the client on the phone, and then we refer them out to agencies that receive funding or agencies in our area that we know of to help. We're basically a homeless coalition, and so we do get a lot of phone calls from those people in very difficult situations. Either they're homeless, about to be homeless, or fleeing domestic violence or something of that nature. And we do assess them and then prioritize them and then work with the case managers to make sure they're getting services. You mentioned the phones is not something that your volunteers would be able to do, and I just wanted to know whether this is an opportunity we should pursue or not. So could you clarify whether something like what I described would be acceptable or not?
Great question. Thank you so much for asking that. I think AmeriCorps members could be really powerful people power in a continuum of care setting because there's so much opportunity there.
Exactly.
And in many ways. So we have had AmeriCorps members that have worked with 211 type of organizations before, where they have been in call centers and helping people in need and meeting their needs.
Mm-hmm.
So that is a possibility. The main thing is that that your AmeriCorps members are not duplicating or supplanting staff. They are providing a unique function or an expanded function. So we can talk more about that offline, but I do think continuum of care are an excellent place for AmeriCorps members. Thank you for your question.
Sure, thank you.
Is there any other question I can answer? Okay, well, we're going to keep moving then. Great questions, everyone.
Presentation mode is now enabled.
Okay, so let's talk about the member and their hours. AmeriCorps members can serve in many capacities. They are full-time, and if a AmeriCorps member is a full-time member, they're serving 1,700 hours. Now that equals about a full-time commitment. Think about it as 30 to 40 hours a week, especially as you add in potential sick time or annual or leave time. That 1,700 hours takes about a year to accomplish, so full-time commitment. And the benefits that I mentioned, including the child care and the health insurance, are associated with that full-time service. AmeriCorps members can also serve in half-time, quarter-time, and minimum time capacities. And there's also like a reduced quarter time. So there's a couple other elements, but these are the main ones that we see. And it depends on the design of your program, which is a better fit. So we have some AmeriCorps members that are college students, and a half-time position is one that meets their needs. We have AmeriCorps members that are retired individuals who want to serve in a full-time capacity. We have AmeriCorps members who are persons with disabilities and are gaining independent living skills, and they too are often serving in a quarter-time or a minimum time capacity. So as you design your program, you can opt into all of your member positions being the same, for example, 10 full-time positions, or you can have a combination of those positions that are some full-time, some half-time. So there are some options there. We talked about while serving what those AmeriCorps benefits were, so just a reminder, the living allowance, the loan deferment, the training, the professional development, and that full-time member receiving health care and eligibility for child care. Okay, so for those grant writers that are on the phone right now, let's talk about the budget for a moment. We're not going to go into too much detail in the budget. I have 2 slides that I want to share with you, but we want to be as clear as possible in the front end about the dollar amounts. So I mentioned that in the AmeriCorps funding model, these federal funds do not support the full cost of your program. They're meant to support some of the cost of the program. So, as an example, if you were requesting 10 full-time AmeriCorps members, you would apply for a grant of approximately $150,000. We have $149,320 on the screen. And here's how we get there. The federal and maximum federal amount that an organization can apply for per full-time member, we call them MSYs, member service year, is $14,932. So for purposes of the conversation, we're just going to say $15,000 here. So that's the amount that you can apply for one AmeriCorps member. One full-time member equals one MSY. The cost for that one full-time member, that cost per member service year is $14,932. 10 full-time members is 10 MSY. So for 10 full-time members at $14,932, your total federal request is $149,320. That is the maximum amount that you can request for those 10 full-time members. Of course, if you're requesting 20 or 30 members, that amount goes up. Now, as you might imagine, $14,932 per member is not going to cover all of the cost of your program, and that is where that match comes in. There is a 24% federally required cash or in-kind match. It's 24% of the total grant. That 24% can be a combination of cash or in-kind, though I will say some cash is necessary. What we usually find is that organizations, once they understand and realize the value, they're matching at a higher and higher rate each year. So we're going to go through one more slide, and then we're going to take your questions. Many people want to know, how much is that? What is the dollar amount of the match needed? So I've used a sample budget that we have on our website. It's a sample budget that is based on the federal e-grants budget to come up with some exact numbers to share with you. So for example, if you were going to apply for 10 full-time AmeriCorps members at approximately $150,000, your minimum match estimate would be about $48,000. Because that is a match, a 24% match on a scenario of a total grant, not just matching the federal amount. For grants that support 20 full-time AmeriCorps members, approximately $300,000, and your minimum match estimate would be about $95,000. The sources for your match per the e-grants budget are either cash or in kind. The source would be private, state/local, or federal. Now, I looked back on our grants, and I looked at what are our grantees currently using for match. You know, what are the most common types of match? And here's what they are. First, there's in-kind donations. I'll share with you a small grant that we serve, a small grant that we have is actually matching at 75% of their total award, and $138,000 of their match is in-kind in space rental and maintenance only. So you can see that in-kind can be fairly large, with examples like space rental and maintenance, staff time, things like that. We also see many organizations use local foundation grants, school district funds, state and federal grants, and agency general revenue. Some federal grants may be used as match for this federal grant. However, you need to connect with that federal funder, and they need to approve that the use of their funds for this match. So that is a conversation to have, but it is possible. We also see another unique idea for securing the match, and that is when a partner contributes a set amount per AmeriCorps member serving. So for example, if you were a lead agency and you wanted to target homelessness in your community, and you placed AmeriCorps members to serve at service sites at 5 other nonprofits, those organizations could contribute to your match by providing a dollar amount per that member. So that is another way to secure your match support from your partners. So that goes back to that first comment about thinking in coalitions and thinking big. Those of you on the phone today, some of you may be organizations that are smaller. You may be thinking to yourself, well, gosh, I really just would like 1 AmeriCorps member or 3. So if that is you, I urge you to connect with other organizations in your community, and let's figure out who is the lead for this application so that you indeed could have 2 or 3 AmeriCorps members serving with your organization, but you're part of a bigger whole. So I'm going to pause there and open the lines for any questions on budgets.
Presentation mode is now disabled.
Does anyone have a question I can answer?
Hi, this is Jan.
Hi, go ahead.
And I was wondering if you could give me some examples of the in-kind match other than space rental and maintenance and staff time.
Sure, Jan. Great question. Many things can be used as in-kind match that would be similar in any other budget. I mean, there's things like your phone expenses, your computer expenses, your square footage of office space, the things that would generally be needed and in a partnership. Those are kind of the things that come to mind. I mean, for the in-kind piece. Yeah, and Jim, we can talk offline, and I can look through some of examples of our budgets and get you some more ideas as well.
Great, thank you.
Sure. Any other
Hello.
questions I can answer?
I have a question.
Go ahead.
Okay, this is Doreen again with Reserve. If we were to, we have gotten an AmeriCorps grant time ago prior to my administration, so I'm not even certain, how that worked out. But my question is, if we were to apply for a grant for a mentorship program, which is kind of the direction we want to go in, we work with people 55 and older. Would we be able to make our current reservists, because those are the people 55 and older, into AmeriCorps volunteers, or will we have to hire AmeriCorps volunteers?
Yeah, great question. I believe in the scenario that you're sharing, if you already have reservists or individuals who are volunteering, their service could transition to AmeriCorps. That is likely. I don't know the specifics of your program, so we can chat about that, but some organizations that have robust volunteer programs could get AmeriCorps funding, and then those volunteers can become AmeriCorps members.
Well, our participants, it's free to join our organization. We only require that people are available to put in a minimum of 10 hours a week and that they are 55 and older, and we prefer people who are retired from some type of profession, that they have worked before, not someone that's never worked before. Also, we prefer people with college education, and they have to be computer literate. So that having been said, we have a database of about 1,400 people, of which, they're all in that category of being 55 on up. I mean, we have people much older than that. And they are not considered volunteers, though we also pay a stipend. So we place them with nonprofit organizations similarly to what AmeriCorps does, and we pay them a stipend, and we charge the nonprofit a specific hourly rate.
Well, Jim, let's talk more about that. I think that one of the keys in that scenario is those individuals would need to serve a certain total hour amount associated with like a reduced time or a minimum time or a half-time position. And so it sounds like those hours may align with that, may not. Great question, and I'll share with you my
I
contact.
think they'll align because when we got the grant before, it's my understanding that the AmeriCorps volunteers work 20 hours a week.
Great. Well, excited to talk with you more about that. So we are going to move on.
Presentation mode is now enabled.
Anitra and I are going to do a little scenario for you about how this could work. So I'm going to ask Anitra some questions, and she's going to kind of fill in the blanks. And so Anitra, you have an AmeriCorps grant. What are you going to address? What problem are you going to address?
So we really want to address the need to increase the amount of young girls that are participating in science, math, and engineering and technology in STEM. We see that there is a decline in that, and as young girls matriculate through elementary to middle school, and we want to try to close that gap and bring in more girls into that side of education.
I love it. Okay, serving girls through STEAM or STEM. So you have 10 AmeriCorps members. Congratulations. What are the activities of your AmeriCorps members?
We would love to host science clubs and STEM clubs at the school, something happening during after school, and we would work with our local area elementary schools and middle schools to offer these services, as well as doing outside projects to involve the girls in science fairs and whatnot.
Great. Okay. STEM-focused, 10 AmeriCorps members are going to serve in after-school club settings. And where? Where is this again? Where will they serve?
We're looking at partnering with local elementary schools, boys and girls clubs that could possibly offer space for us to be able to hold these after-school activities. It would be great to partner with the local schools so that the transportation need is not there and they can stay on site.
And then what is going to happen as a result of these services?
We are hoping that there will be an increase in the number of girls that are participating in science events and technology events and being able to bring home championships from the competitions they would go to and really drive up that increase of knowledge amongst girls in the STEM activities.
And who are your partners?
The local school district, as well as, like I said, we want to partner with the Boys and Girls Club, United Way's possibility to partner with them for some of their after-school activities.
Thank you, Anitra. That sounds like a great AmeriCorps program. So for those of you on the call, that is a scenario of how you go about thinking about this grant. You have a grant to address, in this case, STEM, the gaps in STEM for girls. The AmeriCorps members are going to be in after-school settings. Those are the activities, tutoring and mentoring in after school. They're going to be at elementary schools. And what's going to happen as a result? That's that outcome. Those girls are going to have an increase of knowledge in STEM education. And partners, district, Boys and Girls Club, United Way. So those are kind of the blanks, the what, the who, the where, and then that impact. And, of course, gathering your partners. So that's kind of one example of how to think about this coalition for AmeriCorps. Okay, so you have been awarded a grant. What does it mean to operate an AmeriCorps program? It becomes yours. Your organization, or the lead organization, will recruit and manage the AmeriCorps members. The organization will manage payment of the AmeriCorps member living allowance. They will develop local partnerships and track and report progress data. We support cost reimbursement grants, so the organization will also be invoicing monthly to Volunteer Florida. Reporting, everybody wants to know about reporting. I'll share with you that programmatically, organizations provide a narrative first quarter report and then a mid-year and end-of-year progress report that includes demographics and their performance measure data. And you are also submitting kind of hourly reports to make sure members are on track with getting their hours. I mentioned fiscal, that it's a cost reimbursement grant with the submission of monthly invoices and support documents. You see a couple of graphics in the bottom. We use a Blackbaud MicroEdge Gifts Online, which is our grants management system, and that's where your reporting is entered, and that's where we communicate with you on grant requirements, including your contract. Applicants, however, use the eGrants platform to submit your application and to manage your members. So that is a Corporation for National Community Service federal platform. It's called eGrants, and that is how you'll apply for this fund and then how you'll manage your AmeriCorps members. And there'll be a lot of application information in our Notice of Funding Opportunity that we'll release shortly. Training. Well, we provide a lot of training. So this is a picture of some of our team, not all of our team, but some of our amazing Volunteer Florida team. One of our employees is celebrating 10 years in that picture, Anitra Thomas, our Training and Grants Coordinator. So we assign our AmeriCorps programs to a program manager, basically a grant officer, as the primary staff for your training and your grant needs. So our team, each of 3 individuals, they have about 10 AmeriCorps members in their portfolio, and they're your lead for support. We provide 2 to 3 multi-day trainings annually, including a new program director orientation for everybody just joining AmeriCorps. We also support via bi-monthly conference calls and training newsletters, on-site training, and then on-site technical assistance and monitoring visits that we support for all programs every year. We understand that AmeriCorps is not a simple grant to write, but it is transformative. And as I said before, we want you to be successful and engage this people power in your community. We have 2 funding opportunities each and every year. So I want to encourage you on the call today, let this year be your year to apply. And if this application cycle is not your time, there are other opportunities. We anticipate releasing our next request for proposal or notice of funding opportunity on February 26th. It will be due on April 5th. And funding start date for all programs will be August 1st. I'm going to run into the timeline, run through that a little bit more for you. But again, in just about a week or so, we will launch our next funding opportunity. So your timing today is fantastic. So our anticipated timeline, we have our general webinar today. After the application is released, we will host technical assistance calls on March 7th, a Budget 101 webinar on March 15th, and our FAQs that will be compiled and posted on March 16th. The applications are due in eGrants, and support documentation is to be submitted according to the application guidelines by April 5th. An example of support documentation would be, for example, an audit of your organization, things like that. All of that will be included in our application instructions. And then we have a process to do an external and internal review of proposals received. So that includes our programmatic and fiscal review and an external review by 2 peer external reviewers per new and recompete proposal. For organizations that are selected to move forward with the funding process, we provide you a clarification letter. And basically it's a feedback letter. It shares with you some corrections and some ways to strengthen your proposal on the narrative and budget side. And then those are due back to us on May 31st. Our governor-appointed commissioners review and provide a funding approval on every funding cycle. So that happens in mid-June. And then Volunteer Florida submits that funding package to the Corporation for National and Community Service. They do have a final review. So that's kind of the quick timeline on what to expect, and that anticipated contract start date would be August 1st. We do have a single start date of August 1st for all Volunteer Florida AmeriCorps grants. I'm going to just touch on this a moment, and then we're going to open the lines for some questions. This is the AmeriCorps Pledge. I love this pledge. This pledge is posted in our office, and it's something that is very powerful. And as you read this pledge out loud or to yourself, think about what it would be like for 10, 20, 100 people in your community to take this pledge to serve their community this year and to get things done to change their community. Oftentimes we see AmeriCorps members kind of create new and improved cultures in their workplaces, in the schools, and in the communities. They are often a group of passionate, idealistic individuals that are changing the world for the better, which is very powerful. I'll pause here before we talk about next steps and see if we can answer any final questions.
Presentation mode is now disabled.
Hi, is there any answer for anyone?
That's great.
But I
Don't always be on the line. Is there a question? Anybody have a question for us?
Okay. But is it possible to
Okay, we're going to move on. Thank you, and to this.
Presentation mode is now enabled.
Well, here are your next steps. First of all, gather your partners and decide who will be the lead to apply. Note that full application is going to be released on February 26th. That is something to review with your grant teams, with your CEOs, and to fully review that application. Sign up for future technical assistance calls and webinars. That information to sign up will be in the RFP. Contact our team with your questions. There'll be a central email in the RFP where to send your questions, but you can also email me. I'll put my contact information up momentarily. And then for more information about all of our opportunities, you can sign up right on our home site at volunteerflorida.org so that you continue to get our funding announcements. And if you have ideas or questions, just feel free to reach out to our team at any time as you move through the process. My information is on the screen. I can be reached at cat@volunteerflorida.org or the phone number 850-414-7400, extension 107. And I look forward to setting up a time to answer your questions and talk about your program design. I want to thank you so much for being on the call today. This webinar is recorded and will be posted, and we will email you, all of you who RSVP'd for this webinar, we will email you when that is posted on our website to share with your partners. Thank you so much for your interest in AmeriCorps, and we look forward to hearing from you.